Hundreds of Indian students in Canada's Prince Edward Island region, also known as the PEI region, are staging protests and demanding authorities to allow them to remain in the country. The students have alleged that despite graduating, they are being denied work permits and now could face potential deportation. Students have been in Canada for over a year, and they are claiming that the government has changed its policy overnight. The same students say that the only reason they went to the PEI region was because they were told they could apply for a work permit after 6 months or perhaps 1 year. However, the policy has changed and many now fear being sent back home. Last July, the PEI passed a law restricting postgraduate work permits to students with specific qualifications. They now only allow students with construction, home building and healthcare qualifications to get work permits. Protesting students are demanding that they be exempted from the new regulations if they have applied for work permits before the policy changed. This would allow individuals to plan their lives and futures with some amount of certainty and clarity instead of the panic that they currently face at what they believe are arbitrary changes being imposed by the Trudeau government. The policy change by Canada is also reflective of a contrary stance within the Trudeau administration. Canada had set a target of nearly 5 lakh immigrants in 2024, with the ultimate goal of bringing in almost 1.5 million new immigrants into the country in the next 3 decades. Economic immigrants have been termed crucial to fill the gaps in the Canadian economy. About half of Canada's permanent residents are welcomed because of their skills. In the 1960s, Canada shifted from a system of quotas where different countries were assigned different targets to a points-based system that gives preference to highly skilled immigrants who would more easily contribute to Canada's economy. However, like many Western nations, Canada also has an aging population with a lower birth rate. Immigration already accounts for practically all of the country's labor force. About 1 in 4 Canadians have come to the country as an immigrant. This is the highest number amongst the G7 nations. But finding a strategic balance between immigrants and long-term outcomes has been a challenge for the Canadian government. The latest province, which is the PEI, has chosen targeted immigration based on claims that there is a pressure now on their healthcare and housing market. The impacted students, meanwhile, feel that they've been cheated and exploited. They've spent a lot of money to study in Canada with the hope that one day they will be able to work there. What then are the short and long-term solutions to this problem? We take this conversation forward with our panelists, but first let's listen in to what the students have said.
Hi, this is Rupinder from Prince Edward Island, Charlottetown. I moved here early 2023. And basically, we moved here with hopes of better future, bright future, that they showed us that we can move to PI and we can earn our livings. But recently, what they did in mid of 2023, July, they changed the rules overnight. We were just notified overnight that they will be adding a point system, and because of that, many of our people has to leave Canada because they lost their work permit in hope that one day everything will be back on track. So basically, we are here protesting for our rights. We have 3 demands that we are focusing on. First thing first, our demand is we need to do fair plays on PNPs, and we need to be grandfathered, as we were here before the work permit, before they added the new rules in the PNP system. We were here even long before they were implemented. So we need to be grandfathered in. And our second option is they need to do fair PNP draws. Recently, they eliminated sales and services, food sectors out of PNP that they cannot apply. Even truckers are not getting their invitations. We also earn our living by working hard, and we also have full chance, and we also have right to do things in a proper way. We completed our experience, but what they did, they eliminated us all.
So there you've heard it. Those are the students protesting in Canada's PEI region at this point in time, and these are specifically Indian students who have studied there as well. But what really is the solution for them at this point in time? I have with me Ambassadors Ashok Sajanhar. We also have with us Rabindra Sachdev. I have with me Venkat Narayanan and Surinder Lali. Let me begin this conversation, if I may, with Ambassador Sajanhar. Ambassador Sajanhar, what really becomes the protocol in these sort of cases? Because this is the second province in Canada to do so. The first province, however, did allow some of the students who raised similar demands to actually be granted the right to apply for work permits as per the earlier policy. Before, if they'd applied, like I said earlier, if they'd applied before the policy was changed, then they were granted permission, and that's exactly what these students are seeking as well. But given that the Canadian administration has already faced a similar problem in a certain province, why then not come out with a policy where you won't have to now repeatedly go through the same process of students coming out on streets and demanding a basic right that, listen, we came in with the hopes and ambition that we'll get to work here, so at least allow us a couple of years before we can figure out what to do with life. Ambassador Sajanhar, if you can just unmute yourself.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thank you very much for having me on your show. I think you have raised some very relevant and valid questions. Now, basically, you know, the issue on this is that in many federal systems, whether it is Canada, Australia, even the United States, some of the others, there is much authority, there is much discretion as far as different states or provinces or regions are concerned. So there are, you know, like in India also, we have, as far as constitution is concerned, we have the concurrent list, we have a state list, and we have a center list. So, you know, there are areas where the states can make their own laws, states can make their own rules. And it would appear to me that as far as this issue is concerned, in Canada also it is the different states who have the authority, who have the capacity to make their own laws, their own rules, their own regulations. So, you know, it's not a federal system, federally administered issue that, you know, those, it is valid for all those who are, all the immigrants who are coming into a particular state or into a particular province. That having been said, of course, I think the demands of the students are very justified because, you know, when they came here on, you know, when there were certain set terms and conditions that were informed to them, and it was on that basis that they took this conscious decision to come here and to pursue their studies and, you know, do whatever they wanted to do. So doing this midstream definitely is going back on the commitments that were made earlier. Of course, I think we need also to see, I do sincerely hope that this is a change that has been made, whether in earlier it was made in Manitoba and now it has been made in Prince Edward Island, that it is a provision that has been made valid across the board, that it is not only as far as Indian students are concerned which are covered by this particular change, by this particular stipulation.
No, you're absolutely right. It's not just Indian students.
Yeah. So I think that is something that we need to be clear about. And also, of course, we need to see as to what is the, you know, the relative number of Indian students as compared to students from some of the other countries, because it can be that on paper it is applicable to all students, but then here 90-95% of the students are from India and you know, very few numbers from other countries. Then of course it is the Indian students who are the most adversely impacted upon. And the last point I'd like to make here is you know, exactly what you mentioned at the end of your presentation, that there has to be a strategic balance between, you know, what is the need of the country or of the province or the region in terms of immigrants who are coming from outside, and what is the need of the students. So there has to be a balance between the two. What is the benefit? What is the advantage? What is the help that the immigrant, the students who are here, who are going to be working, how they are contributing to the economy, and what is the cost that is that the province or the state has to pay. So I think there has to be a strategic balance that has to be established, which needs to be done through conversation, through dialogue, through discussions and negotiations.
Absolutely. I want to bring in Rabindra Sachdev into the conversation as well. Rabindra Sachdev, pertinent points there raised by Ambassador Sajanar as far as strategy is concerned. But going on a slightly more personal note here, billions of dollars, Rabindra Sachdev, are spent by these students and their families so that they're sent abroad. And of course, ultimately the hope is that they will get to settle abroad. They'll get to earn in a better currency and perhaps send some of that money back home. Fine, fair enough. But I was reading earlier one of the statements of the students there, and he said that, listen, if you send all of us back, you won't even have skilled labor or enough labor in your workforce who can serve you coffee out of a Tim Hortons. Now that statement, Rabindra Sachdev, really hits one hard, because you see, like I said, billions of dollars are going out of our country into another nation. So they've anyway benefited from the student coming in. But why do you think that students would much rather serve coffee in a joint in Canada than actually come back home?
Well, the last part of the question, I think I would leave it to all individuals, but perhaps they see, better means of livelihood out there, whatever it be said. Maybe there's a certain quality of life, or they see more opportunities there, whatever it be. That's for individuals. But a couple of things, one, we did a study actually when this whole thing blew up as to the number of Indian students and the money and the monetary impact. I'm forgetting the numbers. But taking further from what Ambassador Sajanar said, see, there are a couple of things. Not only Canada, even Australia is revising its regulations, you can say, regarding students. What they're doing is that partially and actually mostly domestic politics and domestic economy. Rental prices were going up, have been going up in Canada for a long time. And it's being blamed on international students, that's one. Another dimension of this whole thing is, by the way, and why it's happening state by state, most, or if not most, many students who go from India are going there for a 1-year certificate diploma kind of a program and then getting into the work stream, right? These are not your 4-degree or 2-year degree students. Fine. What you have there are basically money-making shops, private colleges, who are taking students and, of course, then giving them the letter for the admission for their visa, and these students are going there, paying a lot of money. Now, what the Canadian government has done, it has instructed all its provinces to cut down on the number of such private colleges who are offering only diplomas or certificates and bringing in foreign students on those bases. Okay, so therefore what's happening is going province by province. All provinces are looking to reduce the number of such foreign students who are coming to such basically such institutes, who are bringing in students only pure and simple for the business of education, you could say, right? And thirdly, Canada has also, by the way, looking at the cost of living, they've increased the minimum, or not the minimum, the guarantee which you have to give for a student. It used to be something like, I think, 10,000 Canadian dollars or so. It has now gone up to 18,000 or something like that.
Right.
Similarly, just last week, Australia has done. Australia has also revised its minimum security which a student has to give in. It used to be some number, maybe I think 16,000 Australian dollars. Now they're linking it to the minimum wage of Australia. They're saying 75% of the minimum wage that you can earn in a year is the minimum living expense that you need to have if you come to Australia, right? They're also doing it. So these are all being driven by the domestic economy and domestic politics. But lastly, to your point that serving a coffee at Tim Hortons and all, what also these countries are doing, which Ambassador Sajanar mentioned, and you also mentioned, a strategic calculus. They're all re-looking as to what they think, if they can calculate scientifically, what kind of workforce do they need from immigrants, right? Maybe they need only in construction, only in healthcare. For example, a personal example I'll give you, a friend of mine from Jalandhar, his daughter went there last year to do a diploma in bakery.
Yes.
Okay. And now she's exactly in this position what you're talking about, these guys, right? So now, I mean, Canada may say that, okay, fine, for us, bakers are not not such a requirement, but yes, health workers are, construction workers are, maybe some other categories are. So they are refining and, refining the categories for which they want this, these are not your degreed students, quote unquote, a lot of them who are facing this problem.
Okay, Surinder Lali, bringing into the conversation. Mr. Lali, I just want to understand from you as well on the same aspect. Like I said, billions of dollars are spent to go and study in these countries with the hope that one day you will actually be able to get a return on the investment that you are making for that nation. But today, lots of these students now find themselves in a very tricky spot. My only question is that how do we then ensure, because as Mr. Rabindra Sachdev also pointed out, that several countries are now revising their norms and more countries are looking to bring in a workforce that is highly skilled, something that they're not being able to perhaps find within their own populations and workforce. Does that become somewhere also a double-edged sword for students? Because like I said, so many students there are okay at this point in time to just serve coffee in a shop for possibly a couple of years of their lives.
Thank you, Devika. It's a pleasure and honor for me to be here. And if serving coffee makes them happy, then be that as it may, as far as the means are legit to make money, because I believe in dignity of labor. But having said that, I'm going to start with a quote by Justin Trudeau himself. The quote opens, "The international students in particular have grown at a rate far beyond that Canada has been able to absorb," quote close. But that's the issue. With both Ambassador Sajjanhar and Robin Sachdev also mentioned, the issue is that there needs to be more clarity between the state and the center. They need to be more clear on what they need and what they don't need, because these are children who travel from the hinterland of India. I mean, some of them have even sold their properties. And for them to be stuck between the rock and a hard place is, I think, a very criminal, act. This is, to me, this adds to the list of failures by Justin Trudeau, which I don't need to speak about. But there has been a little bit of hope also, because last week the immigration officer, Mark Miller, was on record saying that all temporary residents be made permanent. Unfortunately, Devika, is also becoming a political issue, because it is also, the left-leaning parties and the communists have started to join it. And my only fear is that I hope between this tug of war, these children who've gone from the interiors of India don't become, a guinea pig in it. Because let me tell you, the last 3 arrests that they made, even in the Niger murder, they're eventually gone on a student visa from India. So obviously something is a miss between the cup and the lip, because the visas are not granted by us and none of these were para-dropped by us. So somewhere they need to wake up and spell the coffee, because otherwise it will become a law and order situation, and Indian students, us being brown, will be both at the giving and the receiving end, because a lot of these kids who've gone there eventually would not want to ask their parents for money and might look for illegal means to do it. And then, of course, there'll be the racial issue too. So I hope Canada really, takes it, solves it in a proper manner. Otherwise, it could become a big issue. And that's why I keep saying that, Canada is heading the Pakistan way. I mean, my last point is, at the recent Baisakhi festival, they were glorifying pictures of Niger and Parmaran, not to mention there was a tent, a booth of the Canadian Armed Forces who were doing a recruitment drive. So that ought to give you an idea that if they don't control all of this, it could be a very fertile ground for what actually happened in Punjab. And, we paid a big price for it.
Yes, Mr. Lali, that's the same, although, just in the same way, and I just want to understand from you, when you talk about dignity of labor, yes, of course, I also respect that. I don't mean that in a disrespectful way, that serving coffee in a shop is bad. What I'm saying is, given the sort of circumstances we're looking at, given the sort of relations we've seen with Canada in the past couple of years, despite that, there are still students who are ready to spend that kind of money to go abroad, even if at the end of the day they know after getting their diploma certificate, they will end up serving coffee in a shop. Why not then do that back home?
Devika, I'm a Punjabi myself, and I don't think a Punjabi is going to like me for what I'm going to say next, but obsession for Gura land, obsession for white skin, obsession for Canada, they don't need any rationality or prudence, because, there are various universities. I also went to community college in the US, and of course, not every college in Canada or America is an Ivy League college. So a lot of these kids are just going to Canada because they want to get away from Punjab, or they want to get away and go into the land of the whites, maybe because they get glorified by the videos and the Netflix. So that's probably not the right reasons they are going for. But once again, who am I to judge each
Yes.
one's individual journey?
Okay, all right,
It's
fair
each one's
enough.
individual journey because, as I said, not everybody is going to a Harvard or a Wharton. So there are all sorts of institutes in the Western land, and there are all sorts of students going too. So as long as they're legit, as long as they're not on the wrong side of the law, as long as they're not illegal, I don't think that should be a problem.
Okay, all right. Let me bring in Mr. Venkatanarayan into the conversation as well. Mr. Venkatanarayan, do you feel that this is then an issue that the government perhaps needs to take up seriously, given that several countries are changing their laws at this point in time, and many students are also now falling into a trap of fake admission scandals? Just last year, there was reports of how 700 students from Punjab, were duped by fake admission letters, and they also spent lakhs of money to go abroad. Do you think that the government perhaps needs to then take it seriously, and we need to also properly educate our children as to what the actual policies and laws are, and the fact that they are liable to change? Because you can't have your government then fighting with another nation that, oh no, you must allow our students to stay back, and the policies should be different for our students. I don't think that's going to be happening. So do we need to now, from a government perspective, take it very, very seriously that so many students are heading abroad, but they're at the end of their courses coming back really disappointed that they didn't get to stay in those countries?
Well, maybe the government should do something about it, but let me give you some figures for our audience. Every year, 1 million Indian students go to study abroad, and they spend $47 billion. And this figure may reach $70 billion by next year, because 1.5 to 2 million Indian students are hoping to go abroad to study. But it is not just, like Oxford or Harvard or, that kind of colleges. You're going for diplomas in bakery or, hair cutting and that kind of thing. It's ridiculous. The basic thing is it's an excuse to, get a visa to go and work in whichever country gives you an admission. And in Canada, for example, out of the 1 million international students, 37% of the students are Indians, 370,000. But after Trudeau made that noise in September last year at the G20 summit, the number of student permits or applications for them has gone down to 14,910. There is no need for Indians to go abroad to gain expertise in, cutting hair or bakery and all this. And there are a lot of colleges with spurious, reputations, and each country has every right to decide what kind of people it should admit. The Americans favor STEM students, so every year 200,000 students go from India to study there. Half of them stay back and end up, higher studies and subsequently become citizens of that country and all that. But yes, I think it's up to those countries concerned to make laws to decide what kind of people should be invited to study in those countries, and then provide them jobs. Most of the people who are going to Canada, for example, from Punjab, as Lali Singh just said, are going for diplomas, 1 year diplomas in bakery, for God's sake. And serving coffee in a restaurant is not such a bad thing to do. Even Ratan Tata, when he was studying in the US, the foreign exchange laws at that point of time did not allow his parents to send him decent money. So he was forced to work in a restaurant. So that's no big deal. I have met a lot of postgraduate students in New Zealand and Australia who are, selling medicines in a medical shop.
Absolutely, Mr. Narayan. The truth is that most students who end up going abroad do end up working in the coffee shops. Once again, I'd like to clarify, my intention is not to question the dignity of the work. You do whatever you have to survive. That's been the case. But today, the problem that we're trying to address is the fact that you're not being allowed to perhaps stay back. You're making an investment of a few years by first studying there. Then you're further saying that, okay, I will do 4 or 5 jobs if I have to sustain myself here, so that in the next 10 to 20 years, my quality of life will be different. That's the hope and aspiration that people go with, but that is not the case today. That's what I'm trying to address. Mr. Lali, I'll come to you in just a moment. Mr. Venkanan, finish your thoughts, sir.
Yeah. You see, the thing is now you have 3 crores and 20 lakhs of Indians working in 180 countries abroad, globally. And half of them are NRIs. The other half are, people of Indian origin with local citizenship or whatever. And most of them are doing very well. But the thing is, the kind of people who are going to Dubai, or, when you land up at Heathrow, the first thing you see is, Punjabi ladies washing toilets and all that. You don't feel very good about things like that. But the point is, if you want to go for higher studies, fine. But you are looking for any excuse to get out of the country and go to a place like Canada or any country in the West where the quality of life may be a little better than what you have in your village back home in India, in Punjab or Telangana or wherever. So, but I think the bottom line is, the people have to decide, do they really want to go? If they are going, if they are aspiring for a decent lifestyle, they should have a decent education and opt for studies in, decent colleges, where once they go to those countries and they finish their studies, they will have no problem finding jobs.
Right.
This problem happened in Manitoba, but they have changed the laws, and these people have been grandfathered, meaning the rules that came into force after these guys went and applied and all that, they do not apply to them.
Yes.
I would reckon that in PEI also, after these 300 students demonstrated and walked the streets of Charlottesville, the same thing could happen. So we don't need to despair at this point of time, it seems to me.
Okay, all right. Mr. Lali, I'll leave the last word with you, sir. 30 seconds.
Devika, now that I have ticked the box on political correctness on the dignity of labor bit, but I'm going to now keep a counter narrative to what I just said, and I think Mr. Narayan made a very good point. I see there could be another problem, because the way artificial intelligence is moving in the world, a lot of these low-end, low-level jobs will be replaced. And Punjabis, I can speak for, are full of pride. So they will once again be in between the rock and a hard place, because once you have gone to Canada, sold all your stock and everything, it'll be difficult to come back. And while staying in that country, those jobs might be taken away by artificial intelligence. So, Houston, we do have a problem, as they say.
Right, absolutely. That's unfortunately all the time that I have for this particular discussion. But I thank all of our panelists for joining us and shedding some light on what could be the possible solutions as far as the entire issue of students immigrating out of India is concerned.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.